Hello everybody. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of my guide to Google Spreadsheets. Today we'll be looking at more chart types, specifically scatterplot charts and combo charts. This episode will be building on knowledge from Episode 1 of this season, which was about line charts and bar charts. This episode will also be looking into a bit more of the niche functions of the chart software in Google Sheets. Before we get started, the document that will be used today is, as always, linked in the description, so I'll give you a few seconds to make a copy. So let's get on with it. Let's get into the first example. In this scenario, we take the role of a zoo manager, and we're trying to find a relationship between the number of animals in each enclosure and the bags of feed needed in that enclosure. So, in order to do this, we must create a chart. So if you remember from episode 1, in order to make a chart, we must first select the data involved, and then click Insert, and then Chart. And now we have a chart. But this is the wrong kind of chart. This is a column chart. And in this chart, we can't really see any correlation. This is no better than us just having the individual numbers themselves. So, in order to fix this, we must change the chart type, for which we go over to the right here, and then click column chart, and then change that to a scatter chart. Now we press this, and now we have a scatter chart. And here we can see some sort of correlation. This is a useful task because it shows us what makes scatter plots unique. Unlike a line chart, a scatter chart does not connect the individual data points. Notice how each of these data points are individual dots. So, what this means for us is there's no implied correlation between each individual data point. It's just all of our data put in a chart, and then we can interpret it ourselves. Whereas a line chart automatically adds that extra interpretation of each point being connected. This is important in scientific settings when we're trying to find our own correlations between data and we can't be sure that one exists. And it's also important in places where you have, as shown here, no real pattern of your data values. Notice we have 10 animals in 3 different enclosures, whereas in a line chart, the line chart would have to somehow diverge here, which wouldn't make sense. But in this scatterplot chart, it works, because the points don't have to be connected. What this allows us to do is to look a bit more broadly at the entire data set, and we can see that there is a correlation, because over on the left side here, less bags of feed needed for less animals, whereas as you go here, there's more data points where more bags of feed are needed for more animals. And this lets us see that there's a slight correlation between the two. That about wraps it up for this task. We'll now be moving on to our second task, which has to do with climate graphs using combo charts. Moving on, we can start our task with combo charts. A combo chart is quite simply a chart which has both bar elements and line elements. We already discussed bar charts and line charts in our previous episode. A combo chart is just both of those combined. So then you have one set of values which is counted as a line, right? And then one set of values which is counted as bars. And we'll see that as soon as we make our chart. So looking at this data in particular, it's climate data. We have temperatures and we have rainfalls across different months. And the important thing here with this data is that it has a different format to the typical data that we would use in a table, mainly because it's more horizontal, whereas in a table you'd prefer it to be more vertical because that saves space on the screen. This isn't a problem. You'll see Google Sheets automatically corrects for this, and even if Google Sheets doesn't automatically correct, there's an option to just flip the axes to make it make sense. So, let's make our chart. If we select our data, click Insert, and then click Chart, we have a chart created. Notice with the axes, there's an option here, Switch Rows and Columns. it automatically turned this on because it noticed that our data was wider. If we uncheck this, then notice it thinks that the months are our values, which is incorrect, of course. So we turn that back on. And looking at the chart that it's automatically made for us, notice both of our sets of values, both temperature and rainfall, have been counted as a line chart. But we want a combo chart where one is a bar value and one is a line value, right? The reason for this is that temperature can have in-between values, meaning if the average temperature in 1 month is 5 degrees Celsius and the average temperature in the other month is 4 degrees Celsius, we can assume that in between the 2 months the average temperature is 4.5 degrees Celsius. With rainfall, however, rainfall is calculated as a total in the entire month. So it's saying in the entire month of February there was 70 millimeters of rainfall. And we can't have in-between values here because if it's a total, then you wouldn't be able to say that in between February and March there was, say, 100 millimeters of rainfall, because there wasn't, because these are totals for the individual months. They're separate, right? Now, if we go over here, this isn't a combo chart, this is a line chart. We want to switch it to a combo chart. So what we do is we click chart type, and then look here in the line section, it's right here. You can see it has both bars and a line. So we click this, and there, it's a combo chart. We have bars and we have lines. But, of course, it's counting rainfall as the line value and then temperature as the bar value. We want to switch those. So the way we do that is we go into series, and then right here you can just select other values. Here we just swap them, and then this seems to have sorted itself out. Now we of course have a problem though. Namely, the temperature values are extremely hard to read. This is because, well, if you look down here, you can't really tell what these individual values are. All you know is that it goes up a little and then down a little. And that's because the scaling here, both rainfall and temperature are on the same scale, on the y-axis, right? And that's not ideal because we can't really read the temperature values well then. So in order to change this, what we have to do is we have to add another axis. We have to add an extra y-axis on this side. One for temperature, one for rainfall. And that would make our chart easier to read, because then you can get roughly exact values for both rainfall and temperature. It's also important to do this because rainfall and temperature are different units. So millimeters and degrees Celsius are of course different units, and measuring them both on the same scale wouldn't make sense. So in order to separate them, we have to go into customize, and then if we click series, we can select our temperature, and then right near the bottom of this menu there's an option for axis. Right now it's on left axis, this one, but we can switch it to right axis, this one, and that makes more sense. But we have another issue now, which is that we have this right axis and left axis, but one, the titles don't exactly match because we don't know if this is supposed to be for temperature or rainfall. You can assume, but you don't want to have to assume for these kind of things, right? And secondly, the bar lines on here, like you have little gray lines, right? They don't line up with the values on the right axis. So we can change both of these things. Firstly, with the title, we can go into chart and axis titles, and then we can click vertical axis title, and then we can type in rainfall millimeters, right? And then right vertical axis. And now we have the title situation sorted. We know what scale is for what value. But we still have that issue with the bar lines. So to solve this, we go down into grid lines and ticks. And then what we want to do is we just want to edit the spacing on this left axis so that it aligns with the ones on the right axis, right? So the way this works in Google Sheets is you can either space by steps or by count. So by steps, that effectively means how much are we going up by for each step, right? So the distance between these two is 50, right? If we change this to say 100, then we can see that it lines up. Of course, this might not be perfect, because maybe we still want to be able to read those in-betweens, right? And in order to change that, we can also have minor spacing. These are effectively slightly lighter lines that go in between and don't have a number, but are still there so that you can gauge. So then here, if we go by count, we can tell it how many lines we want as minors. So if we do 1, then we notice we have 1 in between. If we do 2, then we have 2 in between, and so on. I think 1 is enough here. And now we have a nice little chart. And this allows us to both accurately read our data while also looking presentable and not being overly complicated. And that's about it for today's episode. I hope you learned something. As always, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And we have no homework for today, but if you'd like to do more work with climate charts, then I highly recommend this website in the description. They have data for a bunch of different cities, and you can go on there and easily try to make some more charts on your own. Until next time.